Space nerds! I know you didn't necessarily think this, but Star Citizen's FPS gameplay is so far from being complete, but we got a lot of good details on where it's headed in Star Citizen Live last week. Details ranging from medical dart guns to crossbows, self-revival capabilities, lever action railguns, all of it, some of it, potentially coming this year. Remember, as always, this is just a look at the rest of the year, not the next update. Some of this stuff probably won't even make it this year, so take it all with a grain of salt. Many of you are probably going to recognize some of these things from 2023, 2024 CitizenCon, and some details even from CitizenCon 2019. Finally, supposedly coming into the game. If you'd like the full breakdown with all the context and explanations of what we're about to go over, I will leave the deep dive link down below for you if you like that kind of stuff. Let's begin. A lot of this talk was actually focused on Starware, which you might remember was introduced to us in 2023 as a system that lets your character customize what they were wearing clothes with armor, applying stats to different armor types, and making it kind of make more sense to just wear different things. Some of the most interesting things we found out were basically that the different armors from CitizenCon 2023 are going to have the stats that they said. We'll have medical armor, which will be able to scan for downed players and automatically identify injuries without needing a medical tool. You'll have the engineering armor, which can see the health and the wear information on powered objects and components around the ship. You'll get the resource specialist, people who are looking for things like minerals that can scan for more detailed information without needing to have like a mining tool on hand. Of course, there's going to be combat armor, which gives you a combat reticule, which you've already gotten, as well as more damage resistance. And then exploration, which is focused kind of on everything, a jack of all trades that can let you identify anything in any field to a lesser extent. There are other stats to these armors, but these are just the examples we've gotten so far. The key here is allowing for customization, consequence, and some real roles that you can play in your group that aren't tied to some long-term points that you're building through experience, but to the armor that you're building and finding and looting, how you mix and match that gear and armor and your ship, and what you're willing to give up for that extra edge that somebody else might not be having. It highlights player skill a little bit more, and it kind of gives everybody something to find, earn, loot, create, whatever. Do steal. Something you like to steal stuff, go ahead. Also, key to note, you're going to get full benefits from the suit of armor if you're wearing it, but also any piece of armor that you put on will have some kind of stats or effect on your body based on the amount of your body it's covering. There's a good slide from 2019 CitizenCon that shows this with heat protection and how armor and clothing can help your heat. This then gives you options like deciding if you want a suit that has heavy protection as opposed to a suit that has EVA thrusters. You might have to give or take. They're going to remove EVA thrusters from every suit. If you didn't know about zero-G push and pull, it's going to be in the game because EVA fuel can literally run out. But don't forget, you also have your tractor beam. You're going to have multiple ways to get around. It's just, there are going to be choices you have to pick. There are going to be things you have to choose to do based on what you're equipping yourself with. Actually, something you might not like so much. I think a lot of people have weird feelings about this, but your clothing might matter too. There might be clothing restrictions. Maybe you have to get into a fancy party to take a contract, meet a politician for an assassination mission. Nobody's going to let you into dinner wearing a bodysuit of armor. Also, you can't wear heavy armor while flying ships in the future, so there's going to be reasons beyond even what we're talking about here to switch what you're wearing. Remember, we already had to wear an outfit to get into the ASD locations just last year. I think there's going to be more situations where you have to infiltrate places by putting on a disguise. Just like, please, make it easier to put on the disguise, CIG. It was awful. I mean, if it's so hard to put on the disguise that you're knocking people out and then throwing them at the door to try and unlock it, maybe there are better ways. It's going to be interesting to see how all this is applied in the sandbox, because for a lot of folks, the drip is the end game for games like this. Now, building on this, they are actually going to be pushing a system where armor pieces interact with the weapon you're handling and carrying. So instead of having some encumbrance applied to your body based on having a heavy weapon on your back, the game will calculate the amount of weight that's adding to your armor, to your load on your back, and it'll then determine how you can move based on the weight that's on you. That actually already exists. What they're going to go further in doing is saying that your limbs are reinforced by the armor as well. So when you're wearing heavy arms and a heavy core on your upper body, you're going to need heavy legs to hold all that up. You're not going to see somebody wearing hundreds of pounds of gear like that and then nothing on their lower half to reinforce them, right? Obviously, then the alternative is wearing lighter armor with better stamina but less ability to carry and hold things. Now, I was a bit disappointed here because they didn't get into the idea of powered armor, which is a thing. And I personally think making all heavy armor powered would make a lot of sense in this situation. It would make sense for these buffs, and it would encourage more customization. It'd also mean that you'd have to keep batteries around for your armor if you needed to, be more tough like that. Maybe heavy armor could let you lift like a 1 SCU box as well. And while they didn't get into the idea of powered armor, they did talk about something called super heavy armor, which is powered. So maybe they're just going to shift the concept over there. But this super heavy armor will allow you to carry more heavy, bespoke weapons that aren't quite ship weapons but are too big for regular people. It'll also have restrictions like not being able to heal yourself, which would kind of suck. Speaking of healing yourself, they also mentioned during this show that we'd be able to soon self-revive using an Adrena pen, which would really have an effect on medical gameplay in this game. And we'll have to see, we're going to have to talk a lot about that. It's going to be a huge shift for overall the flow of the game if you can revive yourself after being downed while you're out there doing something solo. Star Citizen continues to try and make the consequence not as hard-hitting in this game, and I'm wondering how that's going to work long term. So all these details, combined with what we already know from Starware, does point at a pretty big increase to our ability to customize as players, play the game a little bit differently, just have a more distinct playstyle that has benefits and consequences. They're showing that the game is actually leaning into that more heavy RPG experience that's customized, pays attention to your ship, the armor and items that you're carrying with you, and then makes you adjust to fit their shortcomings. And that's why I joined Star Citizen. I mean, I love space stuff. It's really cool, but I really, really like the idea of having to choose what you're focused on when you're out in space. The team also talked about audio, which has been a bit of a topic recently with the Star Citizen audio team starting to fix up a lot of the problems we've had long-term in the game since last year. While that is great, FPS gameplay still has a ton of improvements needed. Audio sometimes is what completely takes me out of this game. Specifically, it's things like the quantum glitch and the ammo stacking glitch that always play around, but there's also a lot of levels of immersion that get broken when you're transitioning between areas. One of the big focuses that they mentioned was making sure that players can tell actually what kind of armor a character is wearing just by the sound of them moving around. So a big heavy person obviously would make a ton of noise. But that would also include from the perspective of the wearer. So a person in big heavy armor would also have more muffled audio compared to other people, and they'd hear all that resonance through their armor. On the other side, somebody with really light armor would actually be literally moving around quietly in the game. But it's not just all the immersion kind of stuff, it's important for gameplay too. The FPS radar is coming in soon, and the way that it's going to mainly detect people is through audio signatures. So if there's somebody who's wearing that stealthy armor that's not supposed to be that detectable by FPS radar because it's quieter, I expect people to literally move around quieter in the game when we see them running around in that armor, right? So these are the kinds of details that they're starting to talk about when it comes to the audio team and the FPS gameplay experience. But we've seen demos like this, we've heard about Claudius and Star Audio quite a bit. Take it with a grain of salt. Now that Squadron 42 is finishing up, I think it's more likely that we will see it, but the word on the street is still just that this is kind of a maybe thing this year. One thing they kept saying during this episode was implemented in Squadron 42, coming in Star Citizen later this year. Specifically, this had to do a lot with FPS Gadgets. The team was talking about new weapons and gadgets that they've added into Squadron, have polished, and are actually working over there, that they're finally going to be able to bring to Star Citizen. Now, this wasn't as exciting last year when they told us this, because we already knew what to expect from the Inside Star Citizen that showed us the Volt weapons and some of the different pyro guns like the Space AK. But this year, we're talking about some different stuff now. We're talking about a lever action railgun rifle, a medical gun pistol that allow you to heal from a distance, the crossbow that my man Lurchlord won't stop asking about. All of this expected this year with one of my favorite things they mentioned, better animations for aiming over ledges. So instead of just shooting at the ledge right here in front of you on accident, your character will be able to move their gun over the top and shoot at the person you're looking at, which honestly, these are the clunky little details that have made FPS gameplay in this game not very fun. So I'm happy to see that's going to be taken care of. There's also a change coming to the way characters will carry their gun while sprinting. While a lot of people are used to the gun being carried down here, sometimes people put it up like this. Now, this has caused a little bit of pushback because people feel like this is just coming from arcadey games, but it is something that sometimes you can do in burst sprint. I didn't do it. I'm not a military person, but I've seen some people talk about it online. Zach Priest, one of the developers working on this, also talked about how this is important because the rig in Star Citizen is carried from the skull of the character, not necessarily faked like in a lot of FPS games. So in order to have the gun actually be in your viewport when you're sprinting, your character would have to carry it a lot higher. Because this is a little bit unnatural and will look weird to the other people looking at you in third person, he says sometimes it's easier to carry it like this because you can still tell on the screen that you have a frame of reference that you're moving. I don't think this is meant to make it feel like an action movie. I think it's literally just to give you a sense of what's going on in movement, which is important. So we'll see how it's carried out, but I saw a lot of conversation about this and thought I could explain a little more of the context. From an FPS perspective, this is mainly what was talked about in the episode. Like I said, I did a deep dive you can check out, I'll link it down below, and that goes into a lot more detail about the other questions that they talked about that weren't FPS focused. It's exciting that they're talking about this to me because my gameplay is very focused on looting and finding things and exploring caves and dungeons and stuff, and the FPS situation right now is not great. Even if I don't know why, I don't know all the details of why, seeing more polish on it is good. And the things that they're saying, I can agree with. But it's the same as most development talks. This stuff is coming soon, but we don't know when. And anything can change. Much of this is planned for this year, but things can happen. As always, it's best to take these as a reminder of the direction of the game, not necessarily when those things are going to happen. But I hope you got something from this news drop. I think these are exciting things and people gotta know, so I thought I'd summarize this up. If you enjoyed this talk, I will be doing this just about every day, covering Star Citizen, and soon we're gonna be dipping into more space games. So maybe subscribe if you want to catch some more, leave a comment down below to let me know what else you'd like to see news on, and I'll catch you in the next one.